Here for the DMX?
Yes.
You're in the right place? Got a free seat right up here?
Right.
Oh.
We agreed to say X to you in business during this. What's that? We need to make DMX. Oh, okay. X will take a ticket.
Thank you so much.
Maybe play DMX song. Let's get him queued up.
Last one, couldn't see it.
Like Michael.
Alright.
I'll have a ticket.
I think we've gotten all the tickets, buddy.
But a few people have not given their ticket.
Well, some people didn't bring a ticket.
I didn't bring one.
I'm watching these guys break stuff.
Alright, are you ready to help me?
You know what you're doing?
So,
There's the bacon here.
well, I can't sit right here.
And I'll sign on it. So it's going to be a rain and cue. It's like when you go to one specifically, that's when it's like, oh, let's go. It's fun.
Okay, so, alright,
I want to have a lick.
I'll show you something. We gotta get through the presentation. So everybody who got a kit, it came with several parts. It comes with a USB to RS-485 cable.
It does.
It comes with a 1 meter roll of LED strip. It comes with a D3458. This is the DMX to light adapter. It comes with a set of wires, a box with the bulk of the power supply, and then a twist-tied power cord that plugs into the power supply. Yep. And also a screwdriver. We learned from last year was important.
And all of you that are screwdrivers.
So, we checked it while we were packing the bags, but
This kind of screwdriver.
right, if you're missing one, let me know, and my very helpful assistant will bring you in. Alright, so this is the Artemis Do-It-Yourself DMX Workshop. Presentation. There are some familiar faces here. This is the fourth time I've run this panel.
Yeah.
The presentation actually hasn't changed all that much, so we're just going to go through it again. But there are some new people here, and I want to make sure we cover all the bases so that when we get into actually running the hardware, we kind of have an idea of what we're doing. And so we're all kind of using the same terms.
Yeah. It
Right.
does.
Can you hit the big space bar for that? Thank you. So, Artemis DMX lighting is, I think we can all agree, pretty snazzy. The game uses the NTEC Open USB DMX controller as its primary output. It's not important to really understand all the ins and outs of that controller as much as understand that it's based on a very particular, chip that FTDI makes, and it's used to convert from a USB to a serial signal. The DMX itself is triggered by game state. So if you put the shields up, that's a new state of the game. Trigger red alert, that's a new state that the game says, oh, we are now in the alert. Something should happen in my DMX file. And then there's a file that controls all the DMX programming. This presentation will be on Artemis controlling your DMX rig directly. There is a third-party program called Bridge Tools that is very useful. It's very cool. It extends the powers of the DMX and the Artemis. It does a lot of things that Artemis doesn't do by interpreting network protocol packets and all kinds of stuff. I'm not going to cover that.
Can I do anything for me?
Yeah, can you hit the big space bar? It's a
Is
third
it
party.
this one?
Yes, please. It's a third-party program, and so it's just a little bit outside of my purview. It's got a very active thread on the forum. It's pretty easy to find. The guy is very responsive when the game changes and updates and bugs and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
this is just what the game itself named it supports. So there are some advantages to doing it yourself. It is much cheaper. The NTech Open USB to DMX controller by itself is $70. You can get imported USB to DMX controllers for as low as like $10. They don't always work all that well, but like this cable here is direct from the manufacturer, and it's only $30, and it comes with a meter of cabling, and so it's.
And it comes with these.
Yep, and we included those too. But so you can get a package that plugs in with pre-made light controllers and has the outputs and all kind of stuff, but it's just more expensive. You're also not constrained to
But
pre-made
it's
lights.
kind of like a rainbow.
I know, it's kind of neat. So you're not constrained to pre-made lights. You can go and you can buy a can, is what they're often called. It's just a little circular package. It's often kind of flat,
And
like a
how do
pancake
we
can.
get that one?
I'll show you in a minute. And so they're not that expensive. You plug them in and you're done. But those crazy, the crazy Christmas lights displays you see on YouTube all the time, they're synced up to the music and stuff like that. Those are all generally all DMX controlled lights.
You need one.
But they're all.
You need one more. If you do one on yours, give me an answer, and I will do this one.
Good idea. So you can. So all those though, those are strip lights and individual lights and stuff like that that are put together by hand. There's no strictly commercial solution for make my house look crazy.
I have something to say.
What's that?
Anybody? Can you all get your computers?
Well, we'll get there. We're almost there. We're almost
You
there.
want some water?
We'll get there in a minute. Oh, you want some water?
I don't want.
Oh, okay. Get the space bar. So, there are obviously some downsides to doing it yourself. It takes a lot of work. It's not plug and play, right?
It really means it.
Yeah. And so you get a lot more fine control over your system, but typically do-it-yourself lights are not as bright as just a commercial package. A commercial
Yeah.
package is optimized for being really bright. Yeah.
Anybody, if you do want your rainbow thing, tell me I will do you this one.
Okay, so if you lose your wires, let us know. And we have some more up here. The other thing is that commercial lights often have, usually have the actual controller built in. So you don't need to have a separate stage to take your DMX signal, plug it into a thing, plug your lights into that.
I hear
and keep
your
going.
phone.
It's not my phone. Oh, it is my phone. But so it's a more convenient package because you just plug in the DMX signal, plug in power, and you're done. Okay. You hit the big space bar. So some technical basics. It's basically a serial signal. It's based on the RS-45 protocol. I know, but I need to wait just a minute, okay? The particular controller that we use is based around a chip from FTDI. Artemis uses a particular driver to send commands to the USB port, which then has to go into a DMX converter and out to your system. DMX 512. In just a minute. DMX is officially the DMX 512 protocol, so you can support up to 512 channels or addresses, and you can send 8 bits to each one of those addresses. It's technically an unaddressed signal, and so if you want to send something, if you want to send a signal to channel 6, you actually have to send a message for channels 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then 6 will say, oh, this is the 6th one, I'll look at that. But you don't have to send all of the rest of them. You only have to send up to the channel you actually want to talk to. But you can't just send 1 bit to channel 403. You have to send all the other channels before that, so 403 actually counts each packet of data that comes at it. Now, get the spacebar for me? And the point is that there are basically three parts that we have to worry about. There's the USB to DMX converter. There's the actual controller that takes the DMX data, and then there's the lights that plug into the controller. And those are the three things that I kind of break the system into. The USB to DMX converter takes the USB signal, turns it into a DMX signal. It's usually pretty straightforward. The NTEC Open controller and any controller uses the same circuit based on the same chip. There are lots of them. There are a lot of controllers you can find. China produces a tremendous number of them every year. There's plenty of sellers who will sell to you. If you're going to get one of those, I'd suggest getting at least 4 of them.
More.
Yeah.
I've gone through 10 or 12 of them.
Oh yeah, easy. I mean, we got them for the workshop last year. We bought an extra, I think 10 of them for the 20 people who were at the workshop, and by the time we were done, not everybody had one that was working. So you can get them cheap, but for this one, I'd recommend probably aiming a little higher.
Yeah.
There are some alternatives. This is the one directly from the manufacturer. It's nice because it's got a cable with wire ends on it, so you use screw terminals. The programmer for some Arduinos use the same chip, and so that's enough words. All right. I know. We gotta get to the blinky part. So anyway, you can get it cheap. You can make it cheap. I wouldn't, for some of these things, I wouldn't go as cheap as possible, but you can go cheaper than $70. Still come out with a working signal.
You can't return the ones you buy from China very easily.
That is true. You can send it back, but the next thing is the DMX controller. This is what takes that DMX serial signal, decodes it, figures out which channel it needs to pay attention to, and then activates the lights plugged into it. Commercial lights usually have one built in. You plug the actual signal into the can, you set the address on the back, and you're all done. The DIY ones, this one is a 3-channel controller. You can get ones that are up to 27 channels or even more. When we're dealing with lights, usually we have what's called an RGB light, red, green, and blue. We mix them to get white or any other hue that you can approximate. So another way to think about it is that a 3-channel controller is basically one light. A 27-channel controller is like 9 lights, divided that way. If you've only got it running a red light for red alert, then it only uses 1 channel. But most of the lights will be using RGB. And so the controller will take an external DC power source, usually like 12 volts or so. So DC powered DMX goes in, dimmable light control goes out there. So what did you want to say?
If you do something, let me know. I never did do something new.
Good. So if you've lost a part, let us know, and we'll have more. All right, DMX controller, you can either physically address it with switches, which is vastly preferable, or there are some that are software addressed, which are a pain in the butt. Don't do those. Costs for these depends on where you get them and how many channels you want to use. This one, I know, you tell me that all the time. So these here are like 10 or 15 bucks depending where you get them. It's a 3-channel kind of low power controller. The bigger ones, higher power ones cost more. But here's the real key down here at the bottom. It's either common cathode or common anode. And that determines which kinds of lights, which kinds of lights you attach to. A common anode shares a ground connection, and then you switch the 12 volts into that light. The common cathode. Yeah. Common cathode is a shared ground, switch 12 volts.
Everybody bad than this.
Yep, everybody's got one of those. Common anode is you share the 12 volts across the top and you switch it in the ground signal instead. They both work
And everybody
fine.
does this.
Yep, everybody's got one too. They both work fine. They're both fine. There's no real difference between them. But you
do
just have to make sure
everybody
that
get
that your lights are set up the same way. That's the real key. Just make sure your lights are set up the same way.
Do everybody have this?
Yep, everybody's got a screwdriver. And so the lights themselves is where it really just gets kind of crazy, right? You can do kind of whatever you can imagine, and then some.
Do everybody
Yes.
out?
Everybody's got one. No, everybody's got one. Maybe grab it.
I don't have one. You want to bring one to me?
Let's go around. Watch out for the cords, okay? Okay. Thanks, sir. Most lights use a 12-volt input. They have built-in current limiting resistors. You don't have to even monkey with that. And again, the strip is either going to be common anode or common cathode. It's fine either way. Just make sure you have the right one
I don't like
that
that.
matches your controller. That's the real key. There's two kind of main types of LED strands you can get. There's kind of dumb strand, which is what this is. All the lights in the strand operate on the same signal. So if you give the red channel power and none to green or blue, all of the lights will be red. If you increase all the channels to full, then all of the lights will be white. So the whole strip reacts the same way. Which, if that's what you want, then great. You only need one controller for that whole strip of lights. There are, however, what are now called smart LED strands. I'll soapbox about that term later, but basically, each light in the strip has a separate decoder attached to it.
Yeah.
The controller.
Everybody gets this.
Yep, everybody's got one of those too. The DMX decoder actually then takes the DMX signal, repackages it, and sends it down the line, so that you can then address individual lights and have like a chase sequence or all that kind of stuff. You then only need one controller. The controller's more expensive, and the lights are more expensive, but then you only need one controller to have a chase going around your light string. If you wanted to do that with these kind of dumb LEDs, you need a different controller for each segment of light that you want to control separately, which can get pricey pretty quick. And so it's, there's some trade-offs to look at depending on how you want your rig to kind of look.
And everybody, can you do what I have done?
They probably could. Probably get something taken out of the bags. So we'll get there in just a minute, okay? We're almost done. We're almost done with this part. We're going to get to the fun part in a minute, okay? So DMX cabling. If you're doing a DIY setup, you're probably not using real cables. Commercial DMX units use.
Can I get this?
Yeah, absolutely. Commercial DMX use these XLR cables. You're supposed to use a 5-pin cable so you don't swap it in the mic cable. Everybody uses a 5 to 3-pin adapter so they can use the mic cables. So that's what it is. There are only really 2 wires that you need, data plus, data minus. A lot of them have ground connection also. This is a ground reference. It's not typically required. It's just kind of one of those good ideas. Spacebar? Just once. So, Holiday Coro, which is where this controller comes from, they're the guys who basically
Yeah.
run conventions for people who make their houses into crazy things on
See
YouTube.
what can anybody see what I have done?
I know. What do you want to hit? So, can you go get this screwdriver and the wires and the please? Thank you. So they had this cool kit where you could package it all together, get a cheap halogen light from Home Depot, rip the guts out, stick the lights in, and poof, now you've got a little spotlight. So it's kind of a cool kit.
And do you need a screwdriver?
We will, yeah. And it was pretty cheap, right? It was the whole package. The DMX package was maybe $20 or $30. The halogen lamp was like $3, and so you had this. Thank you. The whole DMX spotlight now costs maybe $35 to do, but it was you completely did it yourself. Yeah, so I just found stuff around my house, like my 12-volt supply. We had a Wii that died. It happened to have a 4-amp 12-volt power supply. Cool. Got the end off, and I grafted it in my system, and it was off and running. What I use for my signal and my power is Cat5 cable. use one pair of wires for the data plus, data minus, and the other 3 pairs for your power. So three of the wires are 12 volts, 3 of the wires are ground, and you can run a couple of amps through it. Oh yeah, so, 3 pairs passing wire. If your power supplies we need cables to run, because that gets hard to manage pretty quick. Technically, based on the wire gauge in a Cat5 cable, the 3 pairs of wires you're using for power can handle up to 10 amps.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'd go that high, but you could. That's up to you.
Do I try to?
Oh, I see you pulling it off. Oh, okay. Let's keep working on it. But for longer runs and big displays, you probably need several power supplies. And all you have to do, basically, is you see power comes in, drops to this box, drops to that box, and you just break it and insert a new power supply, and that'll go to the next box, break it, put a new power supply, and just keep going. The DMX line itself is continuous the whole way, but you can drop in and out power supplies as you need to.
That's the problem from the front and the back.
Yeah.
The power doesn't matter.
Yeah,
where it's
it
coming
doesn't
from.
matter where you plug the power in. as long
Data
as everything is
has
powered.
to stay constant.
Right. So you can find some DMX converters on eBay. Holiday Core has a lot of parts you can buy. They're not grossly more expensive than Amazon or eBay, and they have really good customer support because
They
they're
have great
Texas.
customer service.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
They'll answer any question you have.
Some people have found success on Alibaba, eBay, Wish.com, whatever. But you're kind of rolling the dice with those because you're not always sure exactly what you're getting. But it's cheaper, so get 4. So that's the basics. That's the real basic, high-level overview of how DMX works. We're gonna get into the actual building of it in a second, and that'll be a good test. But are there any questions about the basic application of how DMX works from the computer to the lights? I know I went through that kind of fast, but I think most people here are at least familiar with the idea of it.
You had a soapbox about smart lights.
Yeah, it's not smart. It's just a serial converter. It's individually addressed lights. There's no AI happening. It's not smart. So I just have a problem with the term as it applies to electronics. I think the lights themselves are great. I just have a problem with calling it smart. All right, so a quick addendum based on some panels we had from questions we had from previous panels. When you put a color into the file, it needs to be an RGB colored spectrum. You've got your intensity from 0 to 255 in the file. 255 being full on, 0 being off. But how do I make it cyan? I don't know. You could tweak it and play with it and throw some numbers at it till you got it right. Or you can open up MS Paint or some comparable free drawing program, go to the edit colors, find the color you want, and then look down here at these RGB values. And that's a great place to start. You might want to tweak it from there, but if you've got, I really want it to be, this particular hue of purple. Okay, cool. This will get you close, and then you can adjust the values from there. But if you're stuck trying to find the right color, this is not a bad place to get inspiration from.
Josh, I'm going to paint.
Well, it's not actually paint yet. I'll let you paint in just a minute, okay? So I've got some tips for programming the DMX itself. Basically just how it works. And we can,
Call everybody up.
in just a second, okay? Just a second. Well, I'm not going to go into this too much right now because we're going to go into actually building the hardware. And as we go, if you have a question, we can talk about that as we're building stuff up. But I want to get out of the lecture mode and get into the building mode, and we'll go from there. So, are there any deep burning questions before we get into it? Wow. Okay. Cool. Moving on. All right. So we're going to back out here. Let me get you a paint. Okay. So you paint it. Which one you want to find a robot color for everybody? All right. Let's find a robot color. So what I'll have you guys do is go ahead and open all of your packages, get the power supply plugged in.
I want to.
That's all. Yeah, so the presentation is actually on the forum. I'll comment on the thread topic section. The Artemis forum. Do you want us everybody to see you coming?
Hey, baby.
Oh, okay. Not particularly, but we'll go and swap the If you look behind you. It's on the screen too. So you can just color and why don't you take this? You can swap the white.
I'd like to do something better with the speakers on it, because right now,
I don't know, man. You gotta give them the new one. Bring that back and we'll stick it over here.
speakers from the TV running it, but,
So,
yeah, it's.
just drop it in the back. Transistor is right on top. All right.
Why not have
So you can sit right up here.
I want green.
All right. So, the power supply comes with a screw terminal adapter. We'll leave that on the end of it for attaching the wires. Yeah. All right, good. You gotta be on the picture. Okay. Right, so you got your power supply.
Hey, can you see what I'm doing?
Yeah, we can all see it, buddy.
Green.
All right. This is your USB to DMX converter.
Hey, wait, see what I have done?
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to take over for just a second. Okay. So, okay. What we need are the ground, which is black, data plus, which is orange, data minus, which is yellow. So it'll be black, orange, and yellow. The other ones you can tie back, clip off, save to make another full-fledged serial converter if you really want to. But I'm just going to kind of pull mine back. The only one to be careful of is the red wire, because that might be 5 volts, but just kind of pull them back out of the way.
You said black, yellow, orange?
Black, yellow, and orange. Okay. Right. So, we take our screwdrivers. We're going to... Okay, so on your DMX controller here, we're going to have the switches off to the right. On the bottom row, these series of 6 connectors, right above it, you see a D plus, D minus, G, and upside down R1, D plus, D minus, G. The controllers can plug into either set of D plus, D minus, and G because they're just a straight connection across the bottom. So there's no, it doesn't matter which one you plug it into. Hit OK when you're ready to go. Gotta hit. Gotta click on OK with the mouse. Yep, click. Oh, I think you're on black. Do you want to be on black? So pick a different color. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our screwdrivers. We're going to loosen up the screw terminals on the bottom. I'm putting mine in on the left. Like I said, really doesn't matter. Just fill one you want. And what we'll do is the orange will go into D plus, the yellow into D minus, and the black into G. And tighten it down. Is it not coming in?
Screw stronger than the screwdriver.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine was really, really, really tight to everything I had.
All right. Okay.
Which goes where?
All right, so black goes to G. Orange to D plus, and yellow to D minus.
Then I'm making the robot a rainbow robot.
Oh, good.
Very good.
All right. The next one we'll need is from your power supply. Take two of the wires that are included in your package. Put one into the plus, one into the minus. Doesn't really matter which colors you use. I'm a fan of the black being on the minus side, and then white happens to be the one next to it. So you can use red and orange, or blue and green, or whatever you like. Down there.
Any two wires.
Any two wires you want. And then the plus will go into the V plus terminal on the other side of the controller from the DMX input. The minus will go into the minus.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, this is where you run into that online ordering problem. I had thought that these wires would plug into the controller directly, or into the lights directly. They do not seem to be letting me do that. Which is kind of a pain and a little bit of a problem. So, I guess what we're going to have to do is I'm going to have to come around, clip and strip, and we'll move on. So, clip, strip.
Whoa, Daddy, look.
Oh, the pins won't go.
Oh, that was great, man. Yeah, so the wires that I included in the box don't plug into
Oh, you push really hard and absolutely straight.
Yeah. And so for the rest of us,
Oh, look at that.
I'll come around and we'll do this. So,
Yeah, it's good enough. Wow, wait. What happened here? That's not how that's supposed to look.
Look at see?
wow, that looks great, Dave. You're doing a really nice job.
So we're cutting and stripping these wires.
Yep.
We'll get there so as much.
Oh, everybody, can you watch this?
Mm-hmm.
Did everybody have that?
Oh, wow.
Yep. Cool.
Very good.
Yeah.
You're doing a
Can
really
you
good job.
tell everybody what that
Yeah.
is?
This will plug.
I'm making
Plug
it
this in
a
right.
rainbow robot.
Whoa. He is ready now.
Not pink
Yep.
and green and like
Red and yellow.
keyboard one. This?
Well, that's what I was just talking about. It wasn't. I thought those were the plug-ins to cut the connector. That's what I did. So we have red, green, blue, and.
Look, see?
Ooh, nice job.
See everybody?
You want me to go ahead and you want me to hit yours too? Or?
Everybody, do you want to see this?
Just have to
Look.
You did a great job. Mike.
give it just a little bit of pressure and then pull.
Yeah, the brownish.
And it should pop it out.
Black.
Little bitty one that is built just for, like, it's all like
I'm not gonna need it. I figured it out.
wire strippers.
I think it's pretty slick. Michael's hand smiling tool. Factory.
They're gonna be like, what are you
Most
doing?
polite way
What?
to say.
I thought they're gonna ask what the hell we were doing with all the computers.
I've never been to China, but I bet I know what check this one.
Well, the factory.
Yeah, just to add that.
Ah.
No. I've wired out of there.
Well, you can use these for fun.
Actually, I did.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Then how many days?
Yeah, buddy.
And how then can I tell
I found mine,
So,
the whole thing.
what-
Get to it.
Well, it's only 3 feet.
say
We
can
need
you
it.
then how do we get that one?
You want a different robot?
There's tools in the,
No, you
Your
don't.
box. your
Okay.
tools.
What do you want?
Yeah, they're not these.
I want to tell everybody what I would do.
Okay, what's that? Oh, you know what? We're actually going to start the spaceship game in just a minute. Okay.
I bet you're the captain. You and me both. You sure?
Kids, I have some practice. Nobody else has the tools practice than me. Nobody else has the tools
red, green, blue, and
practice than me.
Can you do a purple? You guys are all set over here?
Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay.
Anybody see how good I did on my robot?
David, it looks so good. You did a great job.
You know the robot up here?
How did?
You know the robot way up here?
It's basically the exact same as the vehicle.
Yeah.
You gotta switch this up, right?
Nope.
Ooh, you're making a shadow now.
You're too short to like anything.
Are you under the red?
I know you're gonna have another blue cluster that we're putting
You might actually have to loosen the screw around.
Different colors, so when power goes to this, all red, it's applied. And
Good.
so when power goes to this, blue is applied.
Cool.
When
See?
power goes to this, red is
Oh, perfect.
so just
Oh, you guys got yours in?
when
We shoved higher.
Oh,
Apparently
can
that's
everybody see?
So there are two.
Can everybody take your seat?
Yeah.
and then
Two B pluses here.
Yeah, and then
Does it matter which one you're using on that?
Nope.
Okay.
It's directly connected across. You just need to make sure you have one plugged in. The lights themselves have to be plugged into be plugged plus.
You gotta space.
So this.
Brown.
So make sure the brown line's plugged in V plus also.
Other V plus,
Yeah.
okay, just making sure. Thank you.
Alright.
Can I do you have a picture?
We got another.
So D plus is orange, D minus is yellow.
Which is a problem.
Now that I'm missing one.
Well, I think you connect it up to the
Do
computer.
anybody?
We're almost ready.
Bill's computer.
So, and then we can take this, like, we can take around the TV, reflect the TV and the words.
Yeah, it's better.
Because you could solder, you could, right, you could snip there and solder down to those pads. Do you want me to run back and make comparisons? Yeah.
Like, I mean, do you want to just bring the soldering iron here?
We're not actually that soldering here.
Oh, okay.
No.
We had one of our wires snap off.
Yeah.
Which one?
The plus 12 volt.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
So
We tried to
actually
go
you
from
can.
the other end, but it doesn't seem to work.
Either that or I'm not, oh,
Are you not on?
I think I'm on.
We unrolled this one, the whole thing and tried from.
Yeah, it shouldn't matter what you're doing. Okay, so everybody,
By loading.
oh, wow. Is it? Okay. Alright, so, with the lights, okay, there's a red, a green, a blue, and a black. On your controller, there's B, G, R, and V plus. So blue goes to B, R to R, red to R, green to G, and then the black wire will go to your V plus. Just a second.
So you can use brown.
Yeah, the V plus is the black wire. So just a second, we're going to turn on the spaceship again. All right. You've been such a big help.
Everybody, are you ready for this?
I don't know if I'm ready for this, buddy.
Yeah.
Oh, I see what happened.
Look at that shark.
Do this. That moisture first.
Yeah. This one's got a light on.
No, power supply.
Mark, what program is that
Power supply.
that they're demoing there?
Well, apparently this is Paint 3D, comes with Windows 10.
Oh, that's the one that they wanted to completely replace Paint with, and then the community got all.
I plug my new computer.
Okay.
Well, that's the
No, there
thing, you
isn't
don't
that
always
with
need to
those.
paint in 3D.
So,
Having something really simple that works is nice.
We want that.
yeah, so actually, here's what we're doing this. We're
Another thing,
ready
This is
to make this light. Okay. Here's what I do. I need to scoot over for a second. Need to scoot over for this.
I have
Thanks, buddy.
Do you want to see mine?
Because I need to go.
It's power supply. They're both 12
Right, you want that, right?
Everybody, are you ready for this?
Well,
Dumpa.
do I need to go through? Actually, let's scribble.
How many technical tests? I wish it was 5 amps.
try this one.
Which?
White, this is not.
I was expecting to see a light come on.
Which of the dip switches have to be set in?
I think the first switch needs to, switch number 1 should be pushed up.
Okay.
I think that's the case. Those power supplies, are your power supplies not coming out?
No.
I don't think I'm getting power.
Yeah. Well, that's a real pain in the butt.
I feel a little on the light side. Is there anything in there?
I would have expected there to
A little bag of sand.
be. Right? Well, this is an eBay purchase.
Any chance you do something simple like an outlet tester?
I didn't bring a multimeter.
I got mine.
I've got a screwdriver.
Two of them across the stream. Oh wait, no.
Peel it off, Nick.
I use my.
Hey, the lights on! All right. Apparently, I needed to charge up the power supply. What? I don't, you know what, it's working now, so I'm not gonna touch it. And that's it. Right. Yeah, but I wanna show you something.
It does show power.
Biggest capacitors you've ever seen. Batteries.
You better means that it doesn't come with one, or you did something wrong.
I also don't see the magic smoke coming out of this.
Surprise!
Maybe that was the ozone I smelled earlier.
Yeah.
Everybody, are you ready? Look, everybody, it's a torch thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look, everybody, look.
Yeah.
No. He missed the bottom one, right?
Well, once I have one
At our table.
well, ERB.
Yeah, I'll show you just.
Okay. I'm gonna see if the boys are ready for this.
Yes, let's do that.
So, when you got it all plugged together, the USB to DMX, you should see a blink red light. That means that data is heading out, which is what we want to see.
Oh.
I want
That held together though. Taking this parrot back to the pawn shop.
What's wrong with it?
Okay, do you have
Not dip switch, it's dip switch.
It's just resting.
It's right for the wheels.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. Well,
He's smelling.
I'm not even getting the ozone smell.
So, if everything worked,
I
ta-da!
brought it.
The
I
lights come
brought my
on.
laptop power supply.
So what you'll notice is that all the lights are on red. Okay? So by itself, it's not exactly
right there.
inspiring.
Can everybody right
But
there?
if you put all the lights in a container, it'll look more or less white. Because it's a nice mix of RG and B altogether. So what I need you to do, you click up here on the columns. Yeah. That button up. And when you go to red alert, yeah. Red.
Any signs?
So, one of the things to remember is that when you've got a bunch of LEDs like this, you can buy it with more or less dense. The density of the LEDs per meter can change. Oh, that was good. So you can buy it with 30 LEDs per meter, 60 LEDs per meter, 140 LEDs per meter. The more LEDs per meter, right, the more blended the light effects are going to look. Now, this particular light source, if you notice, has separate red, green, and blue LEDs. Some of them have.
Yeah, turn it to red.
Yeah. So you want to turn it off for red again? Or do you want to just turn it?
Oh.
So in this particular set of lights, when you go to red, 2/3 of the LEDs turn off. In some lights that are RGB lights, each light itself will have 3 colors in it. And so, this, again, that's just one of the things to kind of pay attention to when you're getting your lights. Is it, 3 separate lights? Is it each light has 3 colors in it? And you can tell, at least a little bit, when you look at the LEDs themselves. If you'll notice, there are 3 resistors here. They're kind of spread out. A strip that'll have RGB LEDs, usually the 3 resistors will be right next to each other, next to an LED,
How do I do
because they're all going to the
typing?
same thing. Good science. So what I have here on my setup is I have switch number 1 on the DMX controller up, all the rest of them are down.
Turn off
Mark
tinier
what?
than
Oh yeah.
mine.
How come it does that? It
Mine
turns them
are
all on.
tinier
Yeah.
than mine.
So occasionally,
Mine is tinier than
I know,
mine.
you have the shiniest one, buddy.
Hey, I want this to be this.
Okay. So sometimes what happens is there'll be a communication interruption, and so it'll just momentarily not have a signal. That could be a variety of reasons. It could be a bad connection at the screw terminal. It could be a bad power supply. Can't imagine why that would be a problem. It could be a variety of reasons. Sometimes Artemis itself actually has a communication problem. If you've got too much in your DMX file, you'll actually skip sometimes. And so you might see a flash or a flicker. I haven't seen flickers with, off the screen. And I don't know the right way to fix it. I mean, a lot of it's, can you go back?
I have one light set, the last light on the screen will flicker on occasion.
Yeah, and sometimes it ran out of commands, and so it doesn't send a command, so it's off briefly. There's a lot of things that it could be doing.
It's not. Looks like it's gonna have to pry apart.
Oh, right there. Second. So anyway, yeah. So and that's, but I mean, this right here is literally all you need to get started, right? You can get different lights, plug it into the controller. If you'll notice,
Anybody still want to see this?
White box.
here, that. If you notice on your,
Anybody do what's upstairs?
you did a good job.
See what upstairs, guys?
And so, if you notice on the DMX controller, there's a data plus, data minus, and ground, and a second data plus, minus, and ground. The second one is for your output. Please move that away. Is for the output. And so you could take 3 wires from the other side of that, run it directly into the next DMX controller down the line, and it'll then get the same data plus, minus, and ground. With the switch addresses here, what you're setting on this address is the first channel of that address. Because it's got 3 channels, and you set it to channel 1, and you listen to channels 1, 2, and 3. On a 27-channel controller, you set it to channel 30. You listen to 30, 31, 32, 33, and so on and so on and so on, up through channel 57. Assuming you do the math right. 31 through 57. So anyway, you set the first address, and then it listens for the next X addresses sequentially, where X is the number of channels that controller handles. The controllers in your setup do not have to be addressed sequentially. The entire command is passed to all of the controllers. So you could have a controller that's listening to channels 1 through 3, and then one's listening to 17 through 25, and another one's listening to 8 through 12, or whatever. The way you have them physically arranged does not actually matter. The only thing to really pay attention to is how you've got it set up. So this is the entirety of the hardware part of the workshop. There's a power supply, USB to serial controller converter, Dmx controller, and some lights. Technically, that's all you need to go to get glowing, right? The Fulminata bridge, Eric Withington's pirate bridge in the back, or I guess in the front of the barn. He's got a very similar set of lights with red, green, and blue.
See what I tried to do over here?
Oh, nice job, bud.
So where is us?
We're all the way up here. But we're out of energy. I don't know what to do.
We have a energy. Go after
But what he does is he puts these into frosted acrylic tubes. And so when the light comes out of the different LEDs, it bounces around in the tube and it mixes in there to some extent. So even though it looks pretty rainbow, if you just look at the LED strips themselves, once it's in something and the colors start mixing, oh, that's
I
fine.
think that's the problem is this.
Do you think that's the problem that he was having?
Yeah.
That might be, I don't know. So anyway, so in terms of actual physical hardware, this total package costs maybe $60 total. Tom has been underwriting the workshops just to get people in and get stuff on the bridge and below, which is kind of cool. This serial controller here is the only serial controller you need for your entire setup. In fact, you only can use one serial controller in your entire setup. If you are running
Is this a new one?
yeah, well, that's the one we've been using, but you can go on. When you've got, when you plug it into your computer, there's some things to keep in mind is that it can be the only USB serial converter plugged into your computer at that time.
Okay.
Otherwise, Artemis gets really confused which ones it's talking to, and it might choke, it might crash, it might ignore it, it might send it to the right one. It's hard to say.
Like
no way to know.
know.
What?
Are we way up there?
Yep, we're all the way up there.
But we have energy?
Yeah. The next thing to keep in mind is that it has to be plugged into a server. So if you're running multiple instances on your computer, like I'm doing here, the best practice is to open up an instance, make that the server. Because usually the first program, the first Artemis to fire up will grab that serial port that's connected. So if you're running multiple instances on a computer, the first instance, make that the server, and then you can make clients out of that. And then the DMX commands file, there's one that's included with Artemis that does exactly this. It turns the lights on, the shields up, the shields down, red alert, general ship lighting. So, you know, just if you just want some lights, you want to plug in, you want it to glow while you're playing, this is it, you're done. Right? Then comes the fun part of really owning it and customizing it and going crazy with it and building tubes and lights and flashing chasers and all kinds of stuff. But for getting started, I mean, this is it. This is all you really need.
See? That we way up there.
Yep, we are way up here. So, I'm going to.
Everybody, we have energy.
We are out of energy. It's tough, man.
He's not.
So the DMX commands file. Hey, could I have you come over here for a second?
No, I need to be right here.
Okay. So the DMX commands file. It's in your Artemis folder. You go to the DAT folder, and I just hit D. And
Did I see on the battery? I do. Kill on that one. Did I did. This one and this one.
good job.
I put the tails up.
Yeah, you did a good job. All right, so in your DAT folder, you sort by type, and what you want is dmxcommands.xml. This is where you program your custom effects and sequences. Excuse me. I need to finish this. The actual event structure, there's a on the Artemis wiki page, the unofficial wiki page, there's a lot of information. Thank you. there's a lot of information on there about actually how the DMX file works, how